Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be in the world. I'm Sara Jane. This is Thoughtful Nuggets and Pearls on Gift of Healing TV. And yet again, I am delighted to say I am joined by my sister. Yes, we are very honest about this, folks. Jaki Bent. Jaki, welcome and thank you for joining us again.
Thank you very much for putting up with me again.
Well, I love our conversations. Because the joy of doing this with two people is that you get two different perspectives, and as much as we are sisters, we're similar, but there are aspects that are very different. Plus the fact there's a 6 years age gap, so sort of,
yeah, I was the spoilt little one.
Not that she thinks she was spoiled. We are we are talking about circumstances, not people. And circumstances, not people, because there are an awful lot of things that happen in our lives that are totally out of our control and actually don't have anything to do with people. But as I just said to Jaki before, I am going to say, yes, there are times when it is something that it is definitely to do with people. And I've covered this in previous programs about if your answer is no, please say no, rather than saying yes and then just letting somebody down at the last minute, because that is very definitely a people letting people down. But we're here to talk about circumstances, because there's so many cases where you can't actually pin it on an individual. Jaki, because you want to say something to what I just said.
Well, I do, and I think just in the comment there to do with people, and when people say yes and they really mean no, and even that in some respects can come down to a circumstance that person has never learned to have the confidence to say no, and they automatically say yes before they've even thought about it. The words have come out of their mouth, and they don't know how to have a conversation to say, actually, I didn't really mean that, or I would like to say no. I mean, I remember reading an amazing book by, I think it's Oriah Mountain Dreamer, and it was called The Invitation. And in it, it basically said, how many of us plan to do something and we think, oh, if so-and-so will pick up our kids after school, or if my mother will look after them, or if so-and-so will do this for me and that for me. And if we go and ask them, and then they say no, but in our head, we've got all these plans there. We feel cheesed off with the person for ruining our plans, but they never even knew that we'd involved them in the first place. So I think there's, I'm slightly sidetracking on that, but I think that this is a very deep conversation, and we're just going to touch the surface. Because there are many occasions when somebody's late, somebody doesn't turn up, we blame them. Maybe their car broke down, maybe they witnessed an accident and they were helping somebody, and we actually snap at them or jump down their throats or ignore them or something. We take it personally. Yeah. And I see you nodding. So Sarah, I'm going to pass to you because I can talk for whatever.
Yes, but I think, there are times when sort of I've organised to have a Skype call with somebody or sort of test with somebody during the programme, whatever. There are times when I've organised to do things with people. We've both been in agreement to do them. And then suddenly, for some reason, they don't appear. Now, I got to the stage now where what I do is I actually send an email and say, I hope everything is all right. Because I don't look at it as being anything to do with me. Yeah. I don't see it as being I've done something, I'm not wrong, whatever. That there is a reason for it. I may not like the reason for it. Somebody just recently, and it was just like, oh, I'm really sorry, I forgot. I was in the process of doing a blog and forgot all about it. Those type of things happen, but all I will turn around and say is, okay, these things happen, and I'm pleased everything is all right. I don't like having my time wasted like that. I really don't. And I will give people plenty of time to, and I've had it where, because we're talking internationally, could have got the timelines wrong, etc., time zones wrong. And that happens as well.
That's me.
Yeah.
That's dyslexic, something tells me that it's so many hours forwards or backwards or whatever else, and then you've got just summertime and this and the other, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness. And some websites tell you that the time is +4 or something like that. And I was on a site recently and it said GMT +4, but what they meant is that they'd put the actual time in GMT time, so it was 7:30 p.m. but the +4 meant that we are that far ahead of of wherever it was. I can't remember where it was, but the actual time they'd put was the right time. So I went on at the time I thought it was, and it wasn't on then. And I was just like, please, can't there be some logic in how this is written? But it is, again, it was a circumstance. Yeah. They've done what they thought was more helpful. Yeah, and I always feel awful if I ever let somebody down. But I do say to people, I'm dyslexic. If I'm not there, text me, message me, whatever else, because I will be there. I don't want to let you down, but sometimes I get it wrong in my head.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing to sort of realise is that people don't. Yeah, there can be a misunderstanding. There can be a time zone thing, because in this day and age of being able to connect, and we were already talking about it before, because on Friday I've got a call with Australia in the morning and with America in the evening, and I was talking to India last week as well, and which is brilliant. It's great to be talking to somebody in the UK because no issues with time zones. But it is about we've got this amazing gift. But I think this conversation came up for me when we were talking about it because of children.
Yeah.
Because of children not understanding. You're a parent, and the example I've always used is when I've been talking to people, you're a parent and you've said to the kids, and you live away from the beach. The fact that Jackie and I live close to the beach, and we have for many years of our lives, is a bit beside the point. But you're inland but sufficiently far from the beach, and you say to your kids, we're going to the beach this weekend. They are absolutely over the moon about it. They want to go to the beach. You're actually looking forward to it as a parent. You know, a family day out is what you're really looking forward to. And the children take that as a promise, because sometimes you've actually used the word promise as well. And then the car breaks down, or suddenly one of the parents has got to go into work, or something else happens. I don't want to talk about some of the more negative things, but things happen that are totally outside of the parents' control. And the parents can do absolutely nothing about it. And they have to let the child down. And the child sees it, that the child doesn't understand, because the car's broken down, you can't go. Because mum or dad has suddenly had to go into work, you can't go, because something has happened.
Yeah.
And it is something, not somebody. Maybe there's been a huge accident on the road and the road's going to be blocked for hours. There's no point in getting stuck in that traffic. It doesn't matter what. Well, absolutely. It could be all sorts of different things. Oh my goodness, have we really planned to go down there? It's the Bournemouth Air Show this weekend. That is not a good time to be trying to get into Bournemouth. You know, there are lots of different things. There are lots of different reasons. There are circumstances outside of people's control. And I personally feel you've got to be late teens, maybe even early 20s, and maybe with some people even into their 30s, before they understand circumstances outside your control. Jackie?
I think that's very true. And I think that I mean, okay, I'm a parent. I've got 3 children. I've got 5 grandchildren, so I'm a grandparent as well. And I watch my oldest granddaughter, and I watch how confused she gets sometimes when something happens. So, for example, Mummy was having a baby, but they have something that's planned to do, but Mummy suddenly is having the baby and things change, you know, and it's not that she's loved less because they've had to cancel what's being done with her.
Yeah.
Because babies don't really give you any warning about when they're coming and everything else. So I'm just going to use that as a, you know, quite a big example. And yet as a child, you just got to look at her face to see that she feels like she's almost being a little bit sidelined or whatever else. But there was nothing that mum and dad can do to change that. You know, it is outside of their control and everything else. I mean, I remember things from my childhood where things were said and then not done. And I don't know the stories around them, but now having been a parent and being a grandparent, I can see that it was circumstances and not my parents. But as a child, I felt hurt, or I felt as though I was to one side, or I felt that I was less than or not as important or whatever else. And I think this is where communication and the way that we do this. And I wonder how many adults there are who have some tiny little hang up or something that just nudges and causes a trigger inside them that can be based on something that happened many moons ago that was actually circumstances and not the people. And yet they felt let down by the person or the people. And when we have an awareness of that, I think it's a bit like dominoes. You can go back to your childhood and you can see what has caused a bit of a hang up through your life. But if you go back and you put a new perspective on it and you reframe it, that it was a circumstance and not the person, actually all the dominoes of the other occurrences in your life up to that point start to change, because you suddenly start to realize, well, that was the same with that thing and that thing and that thing. And suddenly it's almost like somebody's cut a cord from something that was holding you back from the past. So this circumstance is not people. It's actually it's a simple concept, but it's really big and can have a huge impact on life.
Oh, massive. I mean, let's go back to my own story. I was less than a year old. I was hospitalized for 3 months. The rules of the hospital were that my parents could come in and see me for an hour every other day. Reality, because of where I was, the distance I was from where we were living, the reality was mum didn't drive, dad had to have the car for work. They got to see me once a week for an hour. Now, you cannot explain, and I spent my first birthday in hospital, so you cannot explain to a 1-year-old that it's not your parents don't love you, it's your parents do, the hospital won't let them, and the fact that mum doesn't drive, and she's heavily pregnant with your sister, and my sister dying. No, because Jackie's 6 years younger than me. But my sister Gillian dying when she was 9 weeks old. That wasn't people, that was circumstances. Katie being born, having Gillian having been classed as a cot death, although, I think there's a lot that would turn around and say she spent more than half of her 9 weeks of life in hospital because she wasn't well. But she was classed as a cot death. So when Katie came along, because there's another one of us, there's only the 3 of us alive. When Katie came along, mum and dad went running every whimper because of what had happened with Gillian. It was still circumstances, not people. How do you explain to the baby that I was what happened? Gillian didn't reject you. She was ill. She died. We didn't not come and see you in hospital because we didn't want to. It's because we couldn't. And as you said, as an adult, we can start to look back and say, oh, right, okay. And this is what I will always say to people is try and think about what happened in other people's lives. Why do people react the way they do and act the way they do? It's because of a learned behavior potentially from their own childhood, from circumstances, actually, not people.
And that's so true for so many people with so many aspects of their life. I mean, I've come across so many people, clients, and they've had something that's cropped up in their life, and instead of every day being a new day, each day we build upon what we've done yesterday or we've experienced the day before or the day before that or the day before that. And so if we've had one bad experience, then the next time people tend to look, and me included, what can I do to stop this from happening again? You know, that could have been a one-off, a 1 in a million or a billion chances of happening, but it happened. But I'm still going to go and try and protect myself. And because of that, I change who I am as a person. I change my confidence, my self-esteem, I stop myself from doing things, you know, different bits and pieces. And I've met so many people where that's the case. And I think the importance of bringing this subject up today was just, it's that tiny little bit of a seed, something to think about, something to be aware of, that just might help you to think slightly differently. And that slightly differently could potentially improve the quality of your life and let you start changing something. Because when you have the courage to have change, that's when change happens. Change isn't going to happen if you keep things the same.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to say hi to Malathi, and I have that feeling I've pronounced that wrong. I'm sorry, I keep getting it wrong. And if it is the lady, I think it is, she's in Sri Lanka. And if you've got a question for us, please do ask the question. If you're just enjoying listening to us, then it's great to have you with us. It is so important to look at life, but then also to look at your own children if you have children, and realize that you may have made a promise you had absolutely every intention of keeping, because you were looking forward to it as much as they were.
Yeah.
But understanding that children, it's very difficult. I heard you trying to explain something to Mia a few weeks back, and it was brilliant that you tried explaining to her. But I was sitting there, I was standing actually because we were walking along. I was thinking, I don't know how much of this she's understanding. She's 7. She's one of my great nieces. She's only 7. And she is a lovely child, and of course I'm going to say that. But she is a lovely child. But she does struggle with things, and she was being asked to understand something that a lot of teenagers would struggle to understand. And I think that's the thing to realize. It was about circumstances. It wasn't about people, but she was feeling the people aspect because she couldn't grasp the circumstance aspect.
And I think I agree with you. I think that the concept that she was being asked to understand was probably quite hard. But I also think that if we try to explain, then there will be a point in her life where she does understand. I think that quite often we can assume that children don't understand or won't understand. Therefore, we don't bother trying. But if we do try, they may not understand then, but maybe 6 months down the line or something like that, something else happens and you've taken the time to try and explain, and suddenly the penny drops. And in that moment, she can then link it to the memory from before and the memory before. And it stops those things having such a hold. So I definitely agree with you. I mean, I believe that the power of words is incredibly important. I think, in fact, the power of words would be a really good one for us to cover in another Thoughtful Nuggets and Pearls. I tell you the experience from a training course I was on one time, and they do these icebreakers at the beginning. And they gave us 6 words to write down on a piece of paper. And then we had to go around the room. There were about 200, 300 people in the room. And we had to see how many, we had to write the word, and we had to write our definition in 1 or 2 words. Did you just write that down, Sarah?
Yes, I did.
Good, well done. And we had to go around and see how many people had the same definition of those words as we did. And I can tell you that in the room of that many people, maybe having had enough time to speak to 15 or maybe 18 of them, the chances of having anybody who had the same definition were so slim. So actually we all have a different perception on what words mean and what things mean. So yeah, I'd love to cover that in another session before I get carried away now. But yeah, it's a really interesting. You said about children, Sarah. I would say it's actually quite interesting to think about our parents as well, whether they're still here with us or whether they've already passed. I think that if we can go back into some of those memories where we felt let down by them, and we can actually think about I've just seen that, is it Malathi? She's having some problem with hearing us.
Yeah, I'm just telling her to try refreshing.
Oh, okay, well done. So I think it's about thinking about our parents didn't really. I think the majority of people, if they knew how much they hurt us, they wouldn't have meant to have done it. But actually they didn't have that realization or those communication skills or something like that. Again, it's circumstances, not people. In a large number of those cases, obviously there are some people out there who are not quite so nice, and well, we won't go into those.
But I think that's the important thing to think about, is what went on in individuals' lives. You know, our parents were brought, regardless of your age, our parents were brought up by a different generation. Yes. And that's what you've got to realize, is our parents are a generation separate from us, but they were brought up by 2 generations separate from us.
Yeah.
So, and how many times do you hear that there are things that they just seem to go from generation to generation to generation. All right, let's just take a drastic example here. If a child was abused, as a young child was abused by a father or a mother, or a child witnessed the father being really nasty with the mother.
Yeah.
If you're a little girl, you go into a relationship expecting that actually what you're going to get is exactly the same. So you are going to attract the men. I mean, maybe this is totally different, but it's, what did your mother experience to be the way she was? What did your father experience in life that made them the way they are? And our parents had similar experiences. Dad's mum died when he was 5. Mum's dad went away and spent years in Malta and Gibraltar during it must have been the Second World War. Yeah. It can't have been the First World War. It had to be the Second World War. And so he didn't watch her grow up. And the man that came back was a total stranger to her. So technically, our dad lost his mum, and our mum, and our mum lost her dad.
Yeah.
And so they had similar experiences. They did. And so I think that's what you have to really realize, is that it is circumstances and how we deal with them as a child, and then that snowballs.
It does. And I think there's another thing also, maybe in circumstances, not people. Our parents, we were very lucky, had a very good marriage. And, they really did. And our father was just, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, the most remarkable man. There was something about him. There was that twinkle in his eyes, and you sort of felt loved by him. You knew that. And when I got married, I sort of expected my husband to be that type of person, because I'd been brought up where the man was this type of person, and you were left feeling so special. And I sort of didn't know that other types of relationships out there existed. So it was a little bit of a shock when that wasn't quite the experience that I had, because I just didn't know anything else existed. We had quite a sheltered childhood, I think, in reality, we really did, because our parents didn't have brothers or sisters. They were only children. We hadn't seen aunts and uncles and things like that as well. So we hadn't had other families to go against. We were also very lucky with our education. So again, we saw families that were, I mean, I think I only remember 2 children in my time of growing up that mothers and fathers weren't together. I don't remember anybody else, and I mean, it's very different from how it is today. So circumstances, not people, can actually create so many more things in our lives, whether it's from things that are not so good or from expectations that we have. You know, a whole host of things. It really filters out into many areas of our lives.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And I really hope that what we have shared here in this program is food for thought for folks, is sort of helps people go back and think, okay, what's happened in our life? Okay, fine. Because I'm a great one for saying to people, right, think about it. It doesn't mean we're condoning things.
Yeah.
I would never condone anything that harms anyone. I really wouldn't. But if it gives an understanding of why, because I have worked with people, men and women, who have been abused. You know, it's because it's not just there's no gender. It's not gender related. It's not age related. It's nothing related, because it's happened to so many different people. And sort of circumstances within my life enable so many people to actually understand. Don't be afraid of sharing your story, being open to talk about it with other people, and get feedback and ask questions and let them ask questions, and think about the food for thought stuff. Thoughtful nuggets and pearls is what this is totally meant to be. So, Jackie, have you got any last minute before we close?
No, I'd really love it if you'd send us some questions. You know, or is there a thoughtful nugget and pearl that you can think of that you'd like covered? Because I think this is about wanting to have useful conversations that get people thinking, that get people talking, that start conversations that actually help people to maybe put something that in their life that was maybe holding them back in a different perspective, so that they can move forward with greater strength, that it's empowering. So I think to me, that's what it's about, is that by us sharing the little bit of knowledge that we have and understanding from our own experiences and from our clients as well, that we can share, that it might help somebody else. And that's what it's about.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much indeed. Next week, it's actually going to be Thursday next week, and I am joined, with luck, technology permitting, I think we're getting somewhere with this, what is ancestral healing, with Heather Prince. So hopefully we will be bringing that to you. And then I've got some other guests later in the month as well. So I'm not sure whether there's going to be any more thoughtful nuggets and pearls this month, but I'm talking to other people who might be joining me, as well as Jackie will be joining me again in the future. I have no doubt, especially she's given me another idea tonight. Folks, thank you so much for joining us. Malathi, I hope you got to hear all of that, and you'll get the replay anyway. So love, peace and light to you all, folks. Have a brilliant rest of week, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Namaste.